I would like to talk about the contradiction between the way the artwork in the Museum of Everything is displayed and the environments in which the artists who produce this work actually practice. When entering the museum, I felt as if I'd been transported into the disturbed mind of someone locked up in a loft somewhere. This atmosphere was completely different to the ones I saw on the videos of the artists at work, clean, modern, open spaces, so I asked myself why the curator had decided to design the galleries in this way and if it really reflects the hard work being done to give disabled people an equal opportunity. Firstly, I found out about some of the studios from which the work in the museum had come. There are many in Western Europe, ranging from schools for disabled people like Carwarden and Portsbury House in my hometown to large professional workplaces like the Kilkenny Collective for Arts Talent in Ireland. This is an art school with a department dedicated to artists of all ages who have special needs. In Belgium is CREAM, the Centre of the Europe Outsider Art Association. In Rotterdam is Heerplatz, a studio that began as a place. In Rotterdam is Heerplatz, a studio that began as a place for a handful of disabled artists and now has over 50 resident practitioners. In Sweden and Denmark, too, there are studios committed to enabling disabled artists to fulfill their potential. Even though all these institutions seem to be pulling in the same direction, there is one thing that haven't agreed on yet: how to refer to the people they work with, people with learning disabilities and other disadvantages, mentally handicapped outsider artists. Artists with an intellectual disability, but do we need a term to define people just because they seem a little different? Some of these terms may seem a little old-fashioned, but from their mission statements it's clear that the studio staff have a quite enlightened approach to the work they do. Bill Frost in Denmark say that handicap is often synonymous with limitations, but when you view the work of the mentally handicapped, it is vital to look at things from many different angles. As teenagers, we have often had to admit that we are responsible for introducing many of the limitations that may have cropped up. Parts of this statement could be applied in modern art or mainstream school. However, the label that covers most bases is used by a studio in California called Creative Growth, who serve adults with developmental, mental and physical disabilities. They are well known not just in their local area but across the country through widely publicized exhibitions. They were also behind a public service announcement on the use of the word retard. This 30-second film features well-known faces from American TV and become a huge hit on YouTube and part of public consciousness. The Museum of Everything is obviously aware of these studios and the kind of work they do, so why do they do the opposite and encourage the image of strangeness? Surely this is a prejudice we could do without in our society. Having a disability doesn't make someone a freak, and their work is no weirder than many normal artists. In an interview with James Brett, one of the curators of the museum, he remarks that it is a giant artwork by Peter Blake. Blake is Brett's co-curator, and he views the museum as a celebration of difference. Brett's reaction to these artists' work reveals something about the decor and his opinion on politically correct labeling. He says, "Call it art, Brett, self-taught outsider art. What you will. These names mean very little, and they rarely do justice to the astonishing range of private and personal imagery, made so often by those in the most difficult circumstances. It is like stepping into another world. It seems my feeling of being inside a disturbed mind was intended. Possibly Brett and Blake are not trying to normalize this art because they believe it would be doing it disservice. The work in this exhibition may be disabled artists, but Brett says this isn't the important factor, as the works have been chosen for their artistic merit, not for the biographics of the artists behind them. We don't highlight the disability because people predefine the work. A previous exhibition backs up this statement. The work wasn't created by people with disabilities. One exhibit was a collection of stuffed squirrels by Walter Potter. He was self-taught and because the greatest exponent of can you explain this to me? Anthropomorphic. Okay. Yeah. Exponent of anthropomorphic taxidermy. Another was a collection of miniature fairgrounds by Arthur Ridley, a retired farmer who'd been making them for 40 years. What links these artists and the current exhibition is Brett's vision to capture the art of individuals who are not making art for sale. Brett and Blake may not have created any of the pieces in this exhibition, but it is the presentation as a whole that is artwork of these two entrepreneurs, and the reaction this art provokes. One internet blogger, Emma Barlow, wrote that it is a mix of morbid curiosity, delight in viewing the strange, and a childish excitement over being reminded what a beautiful and odd world we live in. But what about the artists themselves, disadvantages and living in care? Something else I saw at the museum can probably help to inform me a little. In one of the galleries were two artists with apparent mental disabilities. Their careers and their side, they were working happily, unfazed by the moody surrounding, and if they don't mind why should be, maybe more art galleries should be like this.
Like Sam, the setting also distracted me when I first walked into the Museum of Everything. I had a lot of mixed emotions. It is hard to know what to expect or how to react when you don't know anything about the place. There is a sense of having fallen into an unknown world with cutaway brick walls and staircase leading to nowhere. The lighting was very dim and made me feel just that little more intrigued. Joyce Scott, the twin sister of late Judith Scott, one of the artists in the Museum of Everything. Joyce Scott describes the institution where her late sister was living as a frightening place, a big old building and big heavy doors with cramped corridors leading to nowhere, as if you're experimenting with a maze game trying to find your way out. The description of Joyce Scott echoes the setting and the atmosphere in the Museum of Everything. The works are placed everywhere, in every corner even behind doors. This could be because of the imperfection of the artists. This makes it more likely that the viewers might miss a few bits, but it helps them to connect with something that they could relate to. Every person has a different perspective in the art world that they are portrayed in, which makes it more likely that some viewers will probably skim through the other pieces until they find something they can relate to. It is true how Sir Peter Blake talks about the atmosphere and setting. It really feels like Alice in Wonderland. Experiencing the Museum of Everything is an adventure that could be successful or not. It depends on how the viewers reflect their emotions and the interpretation of it. We can find answers or even more questions. This is totally different to the way audiences feel when visiting a popular gallery like the Tate Modern. In the Tate Modern, work is displayed in a clinical precision. The viewer knows what they are looking at, what they are supposed to be thinking. The setting in the Tate is done on purpose, that the audience focus more on the pieces. However, the viewer can be left feeling cold. The setting in the Museum of Everything is also done on purpose, but James Brett had done it in such a way it could relate directly to the pieces and the artist as well. This warms the viewer to the piece, which is an advantage over places such as the Tate. At the Museum of Everything, attention has been paid to the presentation. In Exhibition 4, James Brett hired Eve Stewart, the set director who really worked on the film The King's Speech, to design the gallery. This shows the attention to detail Brett puts into the exhibition.
The artists I will be talking about are Alan Constable, Grayson Perry, and Damien Hirst. From these artists, one is from the Museum of Everything. Alan Constable was born in 1956 Melbourne and has been working as an artist over 10 years under the sponsorship of Arts Project. Arts Project is a body set up to promote the works of people with disabilities. He is also part of the Museum of Everything. Alan Constable, while legally blind, is nevertheless in abstract manner. He's not only blind but cannot hear or speak either. Alan Constable rediscovered the idea of ceramic cameras from his childhood, where he constructed intricate models of cameras from cardboard and glue. His ceramic cameras appear soft, organic, and malleable. They are lyrical interpretation of technical instruments. They are not intended to be identical reproduction, but his own personal exploration and reinterpretation of the originals. They could be seen as sculptures or extension of the body. The cameras have a monumental presence. They can be read as monolithic facades that hide some interior darkness. They are like silent watchers. The interiors hold our secrets, and the darkness of those interiors unfold our dreams. None of Constable's work has yet been criticized. People who have been seeing Constable's work have generally said nice things and have described his work as breath of fresh air. Grayson Perry was born in Chelmsford, 1960. He was also a ceramic artist but had no disabilities, as it is not from the Museum of Everything. Grayson Perry's works reflect upon his upbringing as a boy, his stepfather, anger, and absence of proper guidance about male conduct. Some of his work depicts child abuse, yet there is no work depicting sexual child abuse, although we have found the body of your child. 2000 hints at emotional child abuse and child neglect. In other work, he's placed decorative flowers, cliches like flowers with weapons and war. Perry combines various techniques as a guerrilla tactic, using the approachable medium of pottery to provoke thought. For him, the shape of the pot is, in his ceramic pottery, has to be classical visible. Then you have got a base that people can understand. His pot also refers to several ceramic traditions such as Greek pottery. He says he's like the whole iconography. Alan Constable and Grayson Perry are both ceramic artists, yet the meanings behind the work are totally different. Alan Constable depicts an innocent humanity, happiness, and the fascination with vintage cameras, whereas Grayson Perry depicts a sad childhood thought image on pots. The ideas behind Alan Constable work is straightforward. It is a camera. Without knowing that he is blind, you will not be able to guess from his work that he was. Grayson Perry juxtaposed the pain of his childhood through pots. The image drawn on pots shows or tells a story. His pots are used as a narrative figurative media, a round curved surface for a bizarre or bitter story. He often used found images to create a mood or a tension. The similarities between the two artists are the continued usage of media or one subject. All Alan Constable ceramic works is on cameras, and Grayson Perry's works is pot with sad images and torture. Another similarity is that both artists are telling a story of their past, let it be the fascination with cameras and the memory of them, or a violent and sad past. Grayson Perry is not blind or had a disability, yet he seems scared, and his work also commends flaws of society and familiarity with psychotherapy. Damien Hirst is another artist that we will be talking about. Damien Hirst is an English artist born in Bristol. He's Britain's richest artist. At the age of 16, Damien Hirst took a picture of himself and a severe head at the Vaux. He tagged along with a friend who was studying microbiology at the time. Damien was fascinated by the gory side of the human body and how they can be both visually horrific and beautiful at the same time. Dead bodies still do not explain anything about death. The main theme in Hirst's work is death. This gives a different idea of the definition of mortality, life and in some cases spirituality. His wide-ranging practice, installation, sculpture, painting and drawing has thought to change the boundaries between art, science and popular culture. One of Hirst's work was called The Love of God. In this work, there's a diamond-encrusted skull. He embedded 8.601 diamond into it with a value of 12 million. This piece of work carries a price tag of 50 millions. This work tells us nothing about humanity, struggle with our own limitation. Neither does it offer some profound meditation to death. It is simply a glittery, shiny and expensive object designed to make money. Although Hirst has said it was intended to represent the ultimate victory over death, or the maximum celebration you could make against death. Robert Hughes, a prominent Austrian art critic, says Damien Hirst's work are absurd and tactic commodities. Damien Hirst is not a ceramic artist, but connection is the same as Grayson Perry and Alan Constable, with focusing on the subject. This artist has a fascination with death, and all his work shows it. For example, dead animals, dead butterflies and skulls. He uses the fascination with death and the excitement with corpse as commercials. There's no preference to him having a bad, disturbing past, but only that he likes to explore death. Alan Constable's camera are very childlike, but it is understandable that the artist is blind, cannot hear or talk and see, as a memory of what he saw as a child. Grayson Perry does not come out of his past and experience his violent torture through his pots. Not only that he explores his understanding of humanity and society through his work of art. Damien Hirst does not have any kind of disability or tortured past, yet his fascination with death make a person question why choose such a subject to continue with it for many years. These three artists express their understanding of a subject through their artwork. When visiting the Museum of Everything at first, I did not know that it was outside the art. Alan Constable's work drew me close straight away. I like the way Constable's camera looked so natural and childish at the same time. I look at the details and natural look of these cameras and like the shine given to the cameras through glazing. I thought to myself why there are only cameras and not other ceramic work done by this artist, and how he has used one subject to explore it in different camera shapes and colors. After reading about Alan Constable, I discovered he has disability, which intrigued me into his work more than this is the reason I decided to research into other artists who are not outside the art, but how like Alan Constable. Focus on one subject in means of commercial or other. This leaves me with a question: does outside the art need to be labeled?
That was 1 minute.
Yeah, that was. Within the Museum of Everything, the majority of artists featured were victims of different forms of autism, some milder than others. One must question the ethics, or lack of, when viewing some of the works, and whether this is due to their illness, and whether one not knowing the symptoms of the illness would cause a lack of understanding. Before I take you through an example of how the artistic practices are affected by such disabilities, I'll simply run through a list of some of the main symptoms, which will provide some slight background information and help unfold this study. Autism may include suffering from sameness, compulsive and ritualistic behaviour such as repetitively stacking or lining up objects is a behaviour occasionally associated with individuals with autism. Higher functioning autism, not an official term, but recognised amongst many, is often compared to and contrasted against Asperger's. Some say the two overlap. One must understand that someone with Asperger's is thinking, how one interprets what's going on, and how their deficits cause problems before you can begin any intervention strategy. One with Asperger's often doesn't know what to do in a situation. The patient doesn't know the appropriate behaviour because they don't understand how the world works. Or if they know a better solution, they can't use it because they've become stuck. An Asperger behaviour is usually a result of this anxiety, which leads to difficulty moving on and letting go of an issue, and getting stuck on something. This is rigidity, and it's the most common reason for behavioural problems. Larry Edmiston, an artist featured within the gallery, mentioned here the Museum of Everything and an introduction to Larry Edmiston. I've ruined that. You can cut that. Okay, cute teenage girls, faces turned away, skirts a little too high. These are the artist's high school crushes, lost to the passage of time. The description sounds more menacing than the art looks. The phrase cute teenage girls is very problematic, especially for an artist of his age. A teenage boy drawing teenage girls may appear fairly natural, but one reaches an age where this sort of behaviour becomes a taboo. The use of notepaper as the canvas is also an established element in reenacting the schoolboy crush theme. As an adult, he was diagnosed as having Asperger's syndrome. Asperger's is not as severe as autism, and is still high functioning, so one must still be wary of this artist's mentality. Does he still know right from wrong? Larry has a strong fascination with certain girls from his first grade class, which he draws as he imagines them to be today. They're often placed in fantastic and symbolic settings. Their poses reference, amongst other things, pin-up models and record covers. Relating back to the research on Asperger's, this would be Edmiston's example of rigidity, becoming stuck to the point he's fixated on, creating drawing after drawing of teenage girls. One may also link it to that autistic ritualistic behaviour and a symptom of sameness. This all begins to become perfectly acceptable and understandable due to his illness. Yet the reaction to artists without disabilities creating the same artworks would not be so kind. Artists such as Gilbert and George and Jake and Dinos Chapman often produce vulgar work for the sake of it. These are artists who are fully aware of their actions and are intentionally creating work for its vulgar content, only to shock and appall. In the same way, we reconsider and re-evaluate their artistic abilities based on their illness. Should we reconsider their ethics and moral values? Should we simply accept the artist does not understand? Do we really accept this? Or are we pussyfooting due to the high demand to be politically correct in today's society? When we begin to look at issues such as censorship, one of the most notable illnesses that may come to mind is Tourette's. Many well-known psychologists and notable names in the medical field have produced significant case studies on illnesses such as Tourette's. Coprolalia is often stereotyped as the main symptom of Tourette's and causes many people to associate this with Tourette's immediately. Coprolalia is involuntary swearing or the involuntary utterance of obscene words or socially inappropriate and derogatory remarks. Tourette's is often mocked in the media, such as internet sensation Tourette's Guy and the animated show South Park. The misconception that most people with TS have coprolalia, when in fact 85 to 90% of people with TS do not. Though South Park is an example of an art form or media with a lack of censorship which may be considered offensive by many, yet there's nothing mentally wrong with the creators. Pronounced. Shifting back to Larry Edmiston's case, it's becoming clear half of the problem with what is... Sorry. I just read
I improvised at some parts,
No, I
but
was
it
reading
doesn't
the
matter,
brackets.
because when it overlays you don't actually know.
Okay. Shifting back to the Larry Edmiston's case, it's becoming clear half of the problem with what is deemed as outsider art, or disabilities in general, is that we often accept Asperger's and other forms of autism as an excuse for bad behaviour, whether or not the case is severe. Edmiston was diagnosed with the condition as an adult, showing it had not caused him any problems earlier in life, in that he wasn't sooner diagnosed. Yet he was for showing his fetish behaviour at an early age. Does this mean his fixation is not caused by Asperger's, and is merely coincidental since the illness has become apparent? It seems like a very convenient excuse.